My husband texted me at 8:14 p.m. on our third anniversary to say he was stuck at the office and that he missed me, while I was standing 30 feet away watching him press his lips against my business partner's temple. I had only been at the gala for 11 minutes. My longtime client at the Vanderbilt Children's Hospital Foundation had called that afternoon, asking if I could take her at the fundraiser. Her daughter had come down with something. She couldn't make it, didn't want the table to go to waste. My husband thought I was at a vendor dinner across town. My business partner, the woman I had co-founded my studio with 8 years ago, the woman who knew what I ordered at every restaurant in Nashville, the woman who had stood beside me at my wedding and held my bouquet and wept during the vows. She thought the same thing. They had planned it that way. I stood at the edge of the ballroom with a glass of Prosecco I hadn't touched. My phone still lit up with my husband's message, and I watched him lean down toward her in a way that was not new. That was the part I couldn't stop processing. The ease of it. The way her hand came up to his arm without looking. The way he tilted his head to say something private into her hair. These were movements practiced over a long time by two people who had stopped worrying about being careful. My chest went cold. I took one step forward. A hand closed around my elbow from behind, firm but not rough. I turned and found myself facing a woman in her late 60s wearing a navy silk blazer, silver hair swept back, the kind of calm in her expression that takes decades to build. She had been my oldest client. 6 years ago, when my studio had 2 employees and a rented office the size of a coat closet, she had hired me to redesign her Belle Meade home, told every one of her friends, and handed me a referral list that essentially built my business from the ground up. I owed her more than I had ever found a way to say. "Don't," she said, quiet enough that no one around us could hear. "You don't know what." "I do." She didn't let go of my arm. I saw them come in together. 20 minutes before you arrived. I've been watching from the moment I recognized her. Her eyes were level and steady. If you walk over there right now, what do you gain? A scene, a denial. And whatever they've been planning, and I believe they have been planning something, you will have shown your hand before you know what you're holding. The string quartet across the room shifted into something slow. My husband smiled at something my business partner said, and I cataloged that smile the way you catalog the face of someone you are no longer sure you recognize. "Go home," she said. "Look through everything you can find. Come back to this when you know what you're actually dealing with." She pressed her business card into my palm. "Call me tomorrow." I left without saying goodbye to anyone. The drive home is something I don't remember. The house was quiet. His car wasn't in the garage. I stood in the kitchen for a full minute just breathing, and then I walked to his home office. My husband was organized in the way that people are organized when they have something to hide. Every surface clean, every drawer labeled, nothing out of place. I started with the physical files. Third drawer, a folder marked administrative. 2025. Inside it, a stack of documents that had no reason to exist in our house. The top page was a certificate of formation for a limited liability company called Hayward Design Collective, registered in Tennessee, dated 4 months ago. 2 members, my husband's name and my business partner's name. I didn't recognize the address, a business suite on Commerce Street downtown. I kept reading. Trademark transfer documents. My studio's name. My studio's signature design methodology. A proprietary copyrighted process I had spent 4 years developing and another 2 years protecting. The transfer paperwork listed an assignment date 60 days out. Beneath that was a proposal, a pitch for the Caldwell Hotel Group, a Nashville hospitality company I had spent 8 months courting for a flagship renovation contract worth $3.2 million. 2 weeks ago, they had told me we were the finalist. The proposal in my husband's folder was not mine, but it was built from mine. Same phase timeline, same material concepts, same structural logic. The firm name on the header was Hayward Design Collective. My business partner had handed them everything. She and my husband were going to take the Caldwell contract, my client list, my trademark, my methodology, and my reputation, and walk. I sat on the floor of his office with the documents across my lap, and I stayed very still for a long time. Then I thought about the past 4 months, the brain fog that had come on so gradually I had convinced myself it was burnout, the exhaustion that didn't lift no matter how much I slept, the moments during client presentations where I lost the thread of what I was saying and had to pause and regroup. My business partner had been documenting it. I had noticed that much. The way she quietly started copying my assistant on emails, the way she handled client calls I normally led, the way she told me she was just trying to help and I had believed her, because I was too exhausted not to. I went to the master bathroom. My weekly pill organizer sat on the second shelf, the supplement routine I had maintained for 3 years. Fish oil, B12, vitamin D. My husband prepared them for me sometimes when he was being thoughtful. I shook one capsule into my palm. It was pale green instead of the white I expected. I photographed it. Then I sealed the organizer in a Ziploc bag and put it in my purse. I did not sleep. I lay beside him when he came home close to midnight, listening to him breathe, and I counted everything I thought I had known about my life and how much of it was real. Before sunrise, I drove to a pharmacy and bought a small camera the size of a USB drive. I installed it inside his office bookshelf the next morning while he was in the shower, angled toward the desks. Then I went through the motions. I made coffee without the supplements. I went to work. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I let my business partner walk me through a presentation I had already memorized, and I thanked her for it, and I sat across from her in the conference room and tried to map, behind my eyes, how long ago this had started. The camera footage came 3 days later. I reviewed it at midnight with the volume turned up and my office door locked. My husband at his desk 2:43 in the afternoon. He believed he was alone. He was on the phone, chair tilted back, voice low and unbothered, the voice of a man who has calculated his risks and found them acceptable. "The documentation is solid," he said. 6 weeks of dropped client follow-ups. 3 missed meetings she'd confirmed. Her partner has been copying the assistant on every instance. If she fights the IP transfer, we don't even need to go to court. We go to the question of whether she's capable of managing her own affairs. A pause. The psychiatric evaluation is the backup. She's been symptomatic for 4 months. We have the paper trail to prove it. He laughed, easy, low, casual. By October, she's going to be so turned around, she'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She trusts me completely. I played it 4 times. Each time, something inside me got colder and more precise. He wasn't just stealing my business. He had been administering medication to manufacture a record of cognitive decline, so that if I resisted, he could have me declared incompetent to manage my own professional affairs. He was planning to use my own symptoms as weapons in a courtroom. He had been doing this for 4 months every morning, with a glass of water and a kiss on the cheek. I drove to my grandmother's house on a Tuesday. She had left it to me when she died, 2 years ago, a white craftsman bungalow in East Nashville that I had been unable to sell or significantly alter because I still needed to walk into it and have it smell like her. Old paper and lavender and the warmth of a house that had been inhabited with intention for a very long time. I went to her bedroom, to the cedar jewelry box on her dresser. I had opened it 100 times since she died, but never fully cleared the bottom drawer, which had stuck, which I kept meaning to fix and never had. I pulled harder this time. The drawer gave. Inside was a small manila envelope, sealed, with my name written on it in her handwriting. I sat on the edge of her bed, outside. A cardinal landed on the window ledge and held still for a moment, and I noticed it the way you notice small things when you are working very hard not to come apart. I opened the envelope. "My darling girl," she had written. "I spent 35 years as a corporate attorney. I watched what happens to women who build things. I watched them get outmaneuvered by people they trusted, stripped of what they made, left with no recourse because they never saw it coming and had no structure in place when it did. I was not going to let that happen to you. The contact information enclosed belongs to my longtime colleague and trusted friend, who has served as trustee of the Linden Family Trust since 2018. The trust holds a 51% interest in the copyright and trademark rights to any design business you establish during your lifetime. It cannot be transferred, sold, or assigned without your written consent and the trustee's approval. The trust's protective provisions activate upon documented proof of fraud or coercion directed at the business or at you personally. I always believed you had more strength than you gave yourself credit for. I still believe that. Use it now. All my love, Grandma." I was having coffee at the counter. I sat there until the light in the room changed. Then I picked up my phone and called the number on the business card tucked inside the envelope. My attorney had the manner of someone who had spent decades watching people underestimate her and had made peace with it long ago. She met me the following morning, read every document and transcript I brought, and when she finished, she folded her hands on the desk and looked at me without any particular expression of alarm, which was, I realized, itself a kind of reassurance. "The trust blocks the trademark transfer immediately," she said. "They cannot complete the assignment, but that's the least urgent part of this." She tapped the camera transcript. "The pharmaceutical issue is the crux. If someone administered a controlled substance to you without your consent over a period of months, that is criminal. We need the pill organizer tested. I already sent it to a private lab. Results come back Friday." She looked at me steadily. "You've been thinking ahead." "I've had 4 months of someone trying to make me incapable of doing exactly that," I said. "I'm done losing ground." The lab report confirmed lorazepam, a benzodiazepine, chronic low dose administered without prescription or consent. The concentration was calibrated to produce cognitive impairment and fatigue over time without triggering acute symptoms. The toxicologist's note said that sustained undisclosed administration of this kind represented both a serious health risk and a textbook method of incapacitation. My attorney filed the emergency injunction that afternoon. She filed the criminal complaint with Nashville Metro Police the same day. Then she called me. "They'll see the injunction within 48 hours, she said. "They'll know something has shifted." "Good," I said. "I want them in the room when they find out everything." She was quiet for a moment. "Tell me what you're thinking." I called my oldest client that evening. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said, "What do you need from me?" "To be there," I said, "as a witness, someone who is at the gala and can speak to what she saw." "Of course." I called the lead contact at the Caldwell Hotel Group, a patient and methodical woman who had been evaluating our firm for 8 months, and told her that before we finalized anything, she needed to know that someone had attempted to steal the proposal she received from my studio, and I had documentation. She was quiet for several seconds. Then she said, "Tell me when." I booked the private dining room at a restaurant I had designed the interiors for 2 years ago, a quiet space with good acoustics and a door that locked from the inside. I invited my husband under the pretense of a business dinner I needed his support at. I was having coffee at counter. I invited my business partner under the pretense that the Caldwell contract had come through and we were celebrating. I invited my attorney, my oldest client, the Caldwell contact, and I coordinated with the detective assigned to the case, who agreed to wait in the corridor with a colleague until I sent a specific signal. I had 1 week to hold everything together. I cooked nothing, slept in fragments, and spent most of that week very still inside myself, the way you go still before something arrives that you cannot stop and can only be ready for. My husband arrived at 7:02 p.m. and kissed me on the cheek and asked who else was coming. My business partner arrived 4 minutes later, and I watched her face in the moment she took in the room. My attorney, at the far end, my oldest client beside her, the Caldwell contact across the table, and I saw her understand, in the space of about 2 seconds, that she had walked into something she couldn't walk back out of. She was good. She sat down and smiled. I stood at the end of the table and I said, "Thank you all of the table and I here. I asked you to come tonight because something has been happening to me for the past 4 months, and I think everyone in this room deserves to understand what that is. Some of you are here because I trust you. Some of you are here because you were part of what was done to me. And one of you is here because you deserve to learn the truth at the same moment everyone else does." My business partner's hands went flat on the table. My husband didn't move. I laid out the LLC formation documents first. Hayward Design Collective, the trademark transfer timeline, the Caldwell proposal built from my work. I placed a copy in front of the Caldwell contact and watched her expression shift from neutral to something much harder. "That's the first thing," I said. "The second is this." I passed the toxicology report to my oldest client, who read it and said nothing for a moment. Then she looked at my husband the way a person looks at something they have conclusively identified and no longer need to examine. For approximately 4 months, lorazepam was placed in my morning supplements without my knowledge, enough to produce cognitive impairment, enough to cause the pattern of dropped meetings and missed follow-ups that my business partner was carefully documenting. I looked at her directly. "You were building a psychiatric record. If I had fought the transfer, they were going to argue I was no longer competent to manage my own affairs. You had 6 weeks of paper trail." She was already shaking her head, her face gone pale. "I didn't know about the medication. I swear to you I did not know about that." "I believe you," I said, "which is why there's one more thing I want you to hear." I took out the printed transcript of the text thread from my husband's phone recovered by the forensics specialist my attorney retained. His messages to his brother dated 3 weeks prior. "She doesn't suspect anything. By November, I'll have the contract transferred and the firm assets liquidated. Neither of them will see it coming." My business partner read the words and went very quiet. Neither of them. "He told you he was leaving me," I said, "that the two of you were going to run this new firm together. That's how he got you here." I paused. "He told me the same kind of things for 3 years, that we were building something, that he was in my corner." I let the silence work. "He was using us both as instruments toward the same exit. Once the IP was transferred and the Caldwell contract signed in Hayward's name, he was going to liquidate and disappear. No firm, no future with you, no nothing. Just the money wired to wherever he had decided to go." She made a sound I won't try to describe. Low and involuntary, the sound of something understood too late. My husband pushed back from the table and started to say my name. "Sit down." My attorney's voice was entirely without inflection. She placed one hand flat on the table and did not look away from him. "The injunction has been in effect since Tuesday. The Linden Family Trust's protective provisions are active. You cannot complete the transfer. You cannot submit the Caldwell proposal. The pharmaceutical evidence and camera recordings have been in the hands of Nashville Metro Police for 72 hours. She glanced toward the door. "They've been outside this room since 7 o'clock. The detective came in. Her colleague followed. They were professional and unhurried, and they explained to my husband that he was being placed under arrest on charges of criminal administration of a controlled substance, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crime. They were courteous when they told my business partner that she was being asked to come in for a voluntary interview, that her cooperation had been noted, and that the district attorney's office would be in contact. My husband looked at me across the table before they moved him toward the door. I had thought I would feel something large in that moment, triumph or grief or the hollow satisfaction of watching an outcome arrive. What I felt was simpler than that. The feeling of stepping out of a room that had been slowly filling with something unbreathable and finally being able to draw a full breath. The charges took 4 months to resolve. My husband was indicted on 3 counts: unlawful administration of a controlled substance, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crime. At sentencing, the judge noted that the long-term pharmaceutical tampering constituted a deliberate and calculated form of coercive control, and that the court intended the record to reflect that clearly. 14 years. Parole eligibility after 10. My business partner cooperated fully with the prosecution. Her charges reduced to a single conspiracy count, resulting in 3 years of probation, mandatory restitution payments, and permanent revocation of her business license in the state of Tennessee. She sent a letter to my attorney's office 2 months later. I read it once. I put it in a drawer and I did not write back, not because I was certain I never would, but because I was not ready, and I had finally learned to take my own time seriously. The Caldwell Hotel Group signed the contract with my studio in January. It was the largest contract in the firm's history. We began work on the first property in March. A year after the gala, I was standing in the expanded studio. We had finally taken the floor above ours, something I had wanted to do for 2 years, but had not had the clarity to commit to, and which now felt like the most obvious decision I had ever made, when my assistant brought in a young woman who had called that morning asking if she could speak with someone. She was 27, she said. I was having coffee at the counter. She had a background in graphic design and a portfolio she had been building on nights and weekends for 3 years while she was in a situation she had since left. She had nothing she felt confident calling a plan. She wanted to know if there was any path forward from where she was standing. I showed her the desk in the corner near the east window, the one I had used in the beginning, when the studio was 2 people and a rented closet on 8th Avenue, and I was still learning what it meant to own something. Sit down, I said. Tell me what you've already built. My grandmother had spent 35 years watching people dismantle what women made. She had decided quietly and without announcing it to anyone that she was not going to let the same thing happen to me. She had built a structure and hidden it where it would only be found when it was needed. And she had written me a letter I could not read until I was ready to act on it. I did not know yet what I would build next with what she had left me. But sitting across from that young woman at the east window desk, watching her open a portfolio she had been too afraid to show anyone, I thought that I was beginning to find out